and he drools into her for a while just as if he was feeding, and then eventually he does the sperm thing. That's okay. Now here's the interesting thing. For ticks, having sex and feeding is almost the same activity. So there are two aspects of this that are worrying. One is that if you ever find a tick on you, that means that that tick is actually trying to have sex with you. That, I'm sure, has made no one feel any happier. The other is that if you have something like the blackleg tick that's a non-specific feeder, it's going to be non-specific in its choice of mating pattern. Okay, the end of the science here. It turns out that in the forests of Canada, there is wild and crazy tick sex happening all the time. What does this matter? Well, okay, so a bunch of scientists who have nothing better to do with their time are worried about this, but what it means is that the ticks are transferring DNA from one tick species to another. So when we talk about two tick species that are a problem, that's nonsense. The ticks don't read the literature. They have not read the framework. Good for them. They're doing whatever they want to do, and they are not fitting inside the box. And that's typical of the science in the framework. Now, I could keep going about the deficiencies of the framework. There are problems with the surveillance. There were problems with the ethics. The real problem is that it didn't have the patient voice in there. And the reason it's important for us to be heard, us as the people who know more about Lyme than anyone else because we're living Lyme, is because we're a very science literate community. I am always blown away by how science literate this community is. The people reaching out to me saying, I'm doing this science. The people who are doing tick drags in their neighborhood. We're doing the science that needs to be done. Okay, and the other problem is that unless you've got the patient voice in there, we're going to be dealing, basically what's done with this framework, what that $4 million is going to be doing is it'll be stuck in the old boys network, it'll be stuck with the people who brought us to this place in the first place, and they're going to be doing science that's irrelevant. How many people are worried about whether there are other vectors out there that can give you Lyme disease? So that didn't show up in the framework. How many people are worried about sexual transmission? That didn't show up. How many people are worried about congenital transmission? How many people are worried about how safe our blood supply is? This is why they need us. Now, the challenge is going to be getting the people who don't want to listen to listen. And they're going to have to do that. Now, I'm going to be a bit militant here and quote a slightly belligerent military phrase, which is, lead, follow, or get out of the way. Apparently belligerence is the upper way to go. The scientific version of that is incrementally more polite. It's lead, follow, or become utterly irrelevant. At this point, public health has shown very clearly that they're not going to lead. The Association of Infectious Disease Docs have shown very clearly they're not going to lead. So far, they're not doing a great job of following either. Well, that leaves one fate. They're going to be irrelevant. And in fact, they're going to get increasingly irrelevant. Right now, the science that they're not doing is already happening. East part of the country, New Brunswick, you know, the country that's sort of just between here and there be dragons, province. We've set up a Lyme disease research network. It's an interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary network of people, researchers who care. There's a huge number of us saying, we're putting Lyme disease front and center. We're not part of this $4 million. We're just doing the work because it needs to be done. It's being supported by the Canadian Lyme Disease Foundation, so thank you to them. Thank you to all of you who are supporting science. Other things that are happening. For the research we're doing, which is not true of every Lyme research initiative in the country, every project we do is put out to the patient community. There's something called the Patient Research Advisory Panel. I wanted to call it the Patient Advisory Panel, but then it would be called the PAP test. So I was overruled. Although there are a number of infectious disease docs I would like to subject to a PAP test. Anyway, we have PRAP, the Patient Research Advisory Panel. Every project we do is examined by a volunteer group of people from the Lyme disease community, patients, caregivers, medical professionals. You join, there's no obligation. If you're interested in this, going to the Canadian Lyme Science Alliance and just register yourself for the PRAP test. We send out short descriptions of the research. You send back your comments, good idea, bad idea, have you thought about this? This is you could do this, you could do that. We think about them, we send back our comments. So that way we're asking the Lyme community to help us be relevant, help us be important, suggest what's important to you. A couple more things. We're setting up a site which unfortunately they let me name, so it's going to be called Tikipedia, because my sense of humor is, I'm frequently told, inappropriate, but I haven't been able to control it. I blame it on Lyme. Tikipedia is essentially, if you want to become doing tick drags and find out what's happening in your neighborhood, in your backyard, in the playgrounds where your kids go to school, where your grandkids go to school, in the parks where you like to go walking, don't wait for public health to do it. Build a tick drag, start collecting ticks. By all means, tuck your pants into your socks. You look geeky, but hey, make a fashion statement. And start collecting data, find out what is happening in your neighborhood. And I'm happy to test any ticks you find for Lyme disease. So what I'm going to end with is, what we're doing here is, yeah, we're picking up the slack for public health. That's really unfortunate. We'd like to have their resources, we'd love to have their money, but in the end, we're doing what needs to be done. We're looking after each other, and we're doing good science in the process of doing it. So thank you, and I'm honored to be a part of this group.